Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Living on Music. I'm Steve Hauk, and if you look behind me, this is a pretty unforgettable stage. It's small, it's not fancy, but it is legendary. It is the Kingston Mines in Chicago, one of the currently the largest and oldest continuously operating blues club in Chicago, and really is a legendary place. People like Magic Slim, Coco Taylor, Billy Branch, Sugar Blue, other blues legends and other blues mainstays have played there. We went there a year or two ago, a number of years ago, to for a business conference that Suzanne had, and we were able to go hear it, and with Jess, who was there for the conference as well, and check out this amazing place. And that's why I just thought I wanted to put it behind me, because of this next episode of Living on Music, where it is a blues man who is 28 years old and is coming strong with a real push as a up-and-coming bluesman, incredibly respected and revered guy. Clay Melton is my guest on Living on Music, and you'll hear a lot about what's going on with him over the last, again, 14 years of his life. He's been playing constantly. Started playing as a young teenager out live, and then at 21 did his first record. And over the last 3 years, again, it was a musician that was able to get through some of the horrible parts of the pandemic, not being able to play live, not being able to see your band members or friends or people, but writing songs, formulating what you're going to be doing next, and hoping that sometime it breaks out. And boy, is he's churning 2 brand new songs, an album probably out in the spring of 2024, but playing across the United States. And we talk about his upcoming gigs, and also, again, what it was like to grow up in Texas and fall in love with the blues. And we all know the amazing lineup of people like Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jimmy Vaughan, T-Bone Walker, Johnny Winter, Billy Gibbons, the rest is ZZ Top, Albert Collins, Freddie King. That's Texas blues in a nutshell, and that's not it. There's tons more, but that is the base of where Clay Melton grew up. And we talk all about what it's like in your mid to late 20s and growing ahead to be a bluesman. And ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please give a warm Living on Music welcome to Clay Melton. Clay Melton, welcome to Living on Music, man. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you on. And Joe, we were just talking about this. I love the location you're at. Is on your dad's property at this wonderful barn. You've got your piano in there. Are you playing in there yourself often now these days, right now?
Yeah, we just got done with like a month-long run up in the Northeast, and so it's nice to be home, and so yeah, I've been playing the piano a little bit here and just kind of kicking it before we go back out.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love that. When you were playing up around in the Mid-Atlantic, did you come through the DC area?
We didn't end up coming. We were a little bit further north for most of the dates,
Yeah.
but we're working our way from Chicago and the Midwest back to the Northeast later this summer, so we should be stopping in the area.
I hope so. After listening to your music and being a 45 to 50 year, well, it's maybe they're pushing it a little bit. Or maybe when I was in my low teens, beginning to love the blues, love what you're doing, and loving the fact, and we'll talk a little bit about it again, where the blues were created by some amazing people, and then it's been an incredible thing that people have carried on. Behind me right here, Clay, is this is the Kingston Mines. And that is a club in Chicago,
Yeah.
as you know, one of the great blues clubs, founded in '68. It is the largest and continuously operating blues club in Chicago. And I went to there with my partner Suzanne, who was on a business trip. And one night we went to the Kingston Mines. I mean, they've had people like Coco Taylor, Sugar Blue, Magic Slim. I mean, I was thinking of you because I love it. Said one of the things it said about it is scores of other musical greats. And then I read that wonderful line that said, Clay is working hard to achieve greatness. And you're churning along, my friend. I love that. We'll talk about what's going on now. And what I've been talking about with over 200 musicians in the last 3 years with Living on Music is about what has happened over the last 3 years. And wonderfully enough, the majority of the musicians I've talked to, whether they're legends continuing, John McEwen, the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band founder I just interviewed last week, had the same thing as young musicians from DC. Everybody found a way to really push ahead. Talk a little bit about 2020. I guess you announced that a new album was going to come in July, and then you went forward with a wonderful thing. Talk a little bit about how you dealt with the last 3 years, Clay.
Yeah, it seems time has been such a funny concept. Maybe not funny is the word, but just, it's the way that year just halted everything, I'm I'm kind of the same mind as you. It seems, I was happy to see that as soon as the pandemic started kind of to end and then things were opening up again, there was so much music coming out.
Right.
You're like, okay, that's what all these people have been doing. And, I mean, I think most of the time before the pandemic, a lot of artists maybe felt, I wish I had, a little bit of time at home to record, but when it turns into a year, that's a different kind of like
Right.
battlefield you're playing with staying sane for everybody,
Sure.
and so for me, it was an odd time in my life.
I bet.
I had just moved into my grandfather's house after he had passed right
Wow.
before the pandemic. And then it's a house that they built in the 70s. My mom grew up there. I grew up going there as a kid.
Oh,
And then, so, then everything just kind of
amazing.
closed. So I was at a place that really kind of grounded me,
Really?
thankfully. And I was, able to like, connect with my roots a little bit. It's kind of
Wow.
outside Houston as well, kind of, in an older part of Cyprus. And so it was a great place to create, and that's where Back to Blue and that whole record came out in 2021 came from.
Right, exactly. And that is fascinating and actually wonderful to hear. It makes me think of my grandparents' house in Simsbury, Connecticut. And if I ever moved back in there, you're right, the memories and the blood must be just so deep in that house from your family. Oh man, that is fascinating. I'm sure also probably some songs could be written about those experiences by Clay Melton.
Oh,
No,
100%.
knowing you and what you do. You wanted to do a record. You know that things changed greatly as they did with every single, even a midlife cover band guy, let alone a singer-songwriter at your age churning forward into the musical world. We all went through that stuff. You couldn't do the new album release necessarily properly, touring and radio play. So what did you do with this live video of Say That You Love Me? Because there is something real special going on there.
That I'm still so happy with how that came out. That was our first effort to do anything for the intention of release, other than songs we had been working on at home. Just the band and I, or just demoing ourselves. But we wanted the recording to feel live. We wanted it to have that energy, and so filming it and tracking it live at a venue seemed attractive and just felt right.
Right.
And we got with a great venue in Houston, White Oak Music Hall, with just a beautiful room. And Malcolm Harper recorded it, who also did our live album after that. That was our first project with him. And he's, an amazing professional, records jazz fest, 7-time Grammy winner. And so having a team like that to execute it just made it really special. And
Completely. And also in Houston, I mean, that had to be an added emotional part for you, definitely. Kicking off people here on Living on Music, Clay, let's show a good chunk of this. This is again at the White Oak Music Hall in Houston. It is again shot and directed. Was it by Brandon Bond?
Brandon Bond.
Right, and edited by Pet McDowell. This is a wonderful piece of kind of shows the power of this young man and how things are going to continue to churn. This is wonderful. A little Say That You Love Me.
My girl got me acting like a all the sights, saw highway. Every time you leave me, babe, don't know what else to do.
Yeah, Clay, when I saw that, and again, learning about you over the last month or so, that really is a genuine piece of Clay Melton. I mean, again, you must have been really pleased with that, especially after what had been going on then.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, everything is live about that recording except for the audience. There was no audience, and that was probably the oddest part about capturing it. But then, like I said, I'm so proud of it and proud of everybody that was involved. It came together in a great way.
I love it. Yep, and it's great. It shows also. We all know even if we're not musicians or just fans, but everybody knows the live music part of your career is tantamount to your own success personally, professionally, mentally, and boy, are you something live. And that's why I said, can't wait to see you live. Anyway, 2021. All right. So, we were a year into that crazy time we were all dealing with, and Back to Blue, where you had Burn the Ships back in 2017 was your first record, right? So was this your second kind of a record? But I know live, the live record came out too. Talk about what popped out and over those next couple of years.
From our first album, our first debut album, our full length was in 2017. Burn the Ships was the name of that album, and
yeah.
So we put out a couple singles in between there, and then Say That You Love Me we put out ahead of, and it was recorded before we went into process for Back to Blue. And Back to Blue, we partnered with Danny Jones at Across the Road Studios over in Katy, Texas.
Wow.
And we really, that was a album that was made as a team with him, and he really produced a great album. I'm happy with how that came out as well. And he worked at C-Sane with Alan Toussaint, with Patti LaBelle, and recorded guitars on Stevie Ray Vaughan's last album, Instep. And it just it was a great fit.
I bet. And it got wonderful feedback, man. I mean, the Roots Music Report, which is that #1 independent music chart in the world, really fell for you in that record. I mean, number one song in the world. That's okay. And some other things that must have felt good to just get that going though. And again, you're a year into a pandemic, but you're churning along. All right, let's go to the title cut from Clay's July 2021 release. And this is fabulous. It's a little Back to Blue.
When your heart's down on the ground, you don't know what else to do. When your heart's down on the ground, your lover left you for someone new. Unwind your mind, baby, you're back to blue. As your man left you high and dry, you don't know what else to do. Pour yourself some cheap red wine, put on some Delta blues, and unwind your mind. Baby, you're back to blue. Ain't no southern voodoo, no trick that you can pull. If you gotta make do, get back to blue.
Yeah, Back to Blue really had to make you feel good that things were really moving forward for you, Clay, right?
I mean, one, coming out of the pandemic, everything felt unsure, and then as an artist, you never know what song's going to do well or not, or how people are going to react to any piece of music. And so I was glad it was a song like Back to Blue that people seem to resonate with and enjoy, because that for me was kind of the center point, or the impetus of that whole album process. And it reads like a breakup song, but it's really about kind of getting back to my musical roots.
Right.
That was the first song I wrote when I moved back to my grandparents' house. And so it really kind of set us off on a path. And I think informed maybe what we did after Back to Blue, with our focus on getting a live sound,
Yeah, I love that. That's wonderful. And again, it's, and it's funny. Some musicians are like, hey, I don't even want to say this, but things actually went pretty damn well, and it's like,
Yeah, right.
there should be no worry or of any kind of, embarrassment or greed when you guys, and again, on my little level of not having gigs when I was in my cover bands, you guys with your careers churning forward, you had Live in Texas, and it's 10 original songs and one cover. Is that what it is? And it really hit. And there was a song on it. Well, a couple of them, I could play a ton of them. And one of them is one of the second concert, I think, or third I saw Clay, 1975 or 6, was ZZ Top. And so we'll talk a little bit about your amazing cover of one of their great songs. But you had a song called Imaginary Traveler. Now, was that had the challenges of being confined and things like that? Was that something that came to you as well?
Yeah, it was the lyrics plainly read pretty well. Just it's about trying to stay sane through staying in the same place for so long,
Yes.
and kind of taking yourself somewhere in your mind, if that's all you can do.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. And again, the pandemic's kicking everybody's ass, but it's also prompting songwriting and things like that. Let's take a little walk with Clay Melton here on a wonderful piece. This is a little bit of his Imaginary Traveler.
Since we gotta stay inside, stay lost inside my mind. Great way to pass the time, if it helps you close your eyes. Trying to find myself here, I need you to give me there. You know I'm not a traveler, I'm just a wanderer. I know inside, I saw you in that light. Don't try to satisfy, we all need to hide sometimes. Great way to pass the time, if it helps you close your eyes. Trying to find myself here, I need you to get me there. You know I'm not a traveler, yeah, I'm just a wanderer.
Yeah, that's wonderful, man. And that tells some stories about your mind and about a lot of people's minds, what was going on there. Live in Texas, wonderful effort by you, man. And again, Roots Music Blues Rock Chart, really loved it. #1 song in the world again. I mean, that things, and it boasts Malcolm Harper again, an amazing producer and engineering guy with, black keys, which that's pretty amazing. Mary J. Blige, Keith Urban. That must have been wonderful to do that, and as well as you doing some of that part of the album.
Yeah, we love working with Malcolm. Like I said, our first time working with him was the "Say That You Love Me" video, and so he came in to. We recorded live in Texas in Houston at a venue called the Do-Si Do, which was kind of one of the first places to give me a chance when I was growing up and younger. One of the first ticketed shows that I opened up for some people. It was a step up from the juke joints and the
Right.
bars that we were playing. And it's a beautiful room. It's a 300-year-old tobacco barn that they moved from somewhere in the Delta, like piece by piece, and recreated it. And it just, all the wood just soaks up the sounds. Like,
Oh,
we're a loud rock and roll band, but we sound great in that room. So the
wow.
whole process was fun. It really was a live album. We didn't want to, be recutting solos 3 months after the show happened.
Right.
And so I'm happy of how the band kind of came together, and that was the first project that we arranged as the current iteration of the band as well. Basically with the new addition of Zachary Cox on bass, and then
Right.
Zach Grindle on drums has been with me since 2017 for our first album.
Yes, and it's the three of you as we speak. Is that who goes out and tours right
Yes,
now with you?
yeah, that's the team.
The two Zachs, right?
Yep,
Yeah, that's great. Clay,
Zachary Cox and Zach Grindle.
Clay and the Two Zacks. That's your other also known as band name is Clay and the Two Zacks. I love that, and that's wonderful that those guys that you're synced. And speaking of syncing, you released a worldwide single. I think it was back in February, right? And that's Alive on a Wire, and then came out and what was it around in April with
Yep.
Runner. Where did those come from, Clay? Where did those songs build? Were they back from a while, or did you write them recently before that?
They're both, as far as when they started and stuff, have different stories, but both of them are a part of our new process, which has been just DIY recording ourselves at home, giving ourselves, we've always worked in studios with producers for everything else we've done leading up to this.
Right.
And I'm glad we did, because it's always been a great process. But now we don't have a lot of fancy mics or anything, but we do have, a room where the drums sound good, and time to explore and give the songs the time they need. And Live on a Wire was something we wrote after our summer 22 tour, which that's kind of topically what the song's about, just the whirlwind of touring and the rock and roll and stuff like that. And
Oh,
Runner had more of a journey because it first was released on our Live in Texas album, first introduced to the world as a live track. And then we played it for a year, and at all the shows, it was the song where people were asking about it after. People were excited during the performance of it. So we're like, we got to do a studio version of this. And if you listen to the two versions, there's some pretty massive differences. And that was part of the reason I wanted to introduce a lot of new material on our live album, is to do the fan experience. I've always enjoyed hearing a band do a track live and them pulling out different things, and the songs never stop growing, and that's kind
sure.
of Runner is our chance at that.
Oh, that's fabulous. Well, we've got a wonderful collage right here for people to give them a sense of what you are doing right now, at least of your creativity, and I'm sure it's surging beyond even these two songs. But here is a little look at a couple of live moments with those two songs, and I love them both, especially because one's in Teaneck, New Jersey, and I'm from Connecticut, but a huge Jersey guy, massive Springsteen fan, love New Jersey in general. So you're in Teaneck at the Debonair Music Hall. And then there's a little at the Do-Si Do in Woodlands, Texas. Is that near you? Where you or
Oh yeah.
That's great. That is great. Here you go, guys. Here's a little bit of a couple of those songs, a little bit of a live taste also of Clay Melton with a little bit of Runner and Alive on a Wire.
to hide. I'm not your number. Show you what I got inside. We can waste good time doing the wrong things. I could have chased the lines till that sun came. I could tell you now, but you know what I'm all about. Baby, I'm a runner.
Well, look at you. I mean, that stuff sounds great. You seem like you're in you know, again, it seems, Clay, that things are, do you feel good about where you are right now and how things are going forward?
I do. I think we were chatting about it before the show, but just for me as an artist, you know that saying, "You only feel as good as your newest song."
Right.
But it's been great to, like, you know, feel on track this summer. Just whenever we're touring a lot, like we want to be, you know, that's where we want to be, is out on the road.
No, that's fantastic. What I do on Living on Music, as we talk about your current, you know, churning along stuff and your new songs and things like that. Just a little bit how Clay Melton got to be Clay Melton at 28 and how things are going so wonderfully. I know that you were born in Louisiana, late 90s. When did you leave and go to Texas? What age?
Let's see. I think we moved back and forth a couple times as I was
Okay.
growing up,
Right.
between Lake Charles and Houston. All my dad's side of the family is from Louisiana, and then my mother's side of the family immigrated to Galveston and is from there and in the Houston area.
Right.
And so we moved back and forth, but I think we moved to Texas permanently maybe around kindergarten or first grade. So I grew up in Houston.
Right. And you know, again, it's wonderful to hear to the different ways that music entered the mind of Clay Melton. But how did that begin? Did it begin really young when you started fooling around with stuff? Who was giving you a sense of music?
My dad was my first major influence in music, and you know, I was grateful that he showed me a lot of music early on. But the first thing that, you know, was impactful was him giving me his cassette collection in a
Oh,
briefcase, and that had, you know, 50 or so cassettes. It was classic country, classic rock, Willie
oh,
Nelson, George Strait, ZZ Top, Rush, you know, a lot of great stuff. And but that was my first time I could sit down and really digest music and pick out what I wanted to listen to. And so I've always grown up consuming albums, you know. Then from there, for guitar, it was hearing Hendrix riding along my dad's truck, and I'd heard Hendrix before, but I'd never really listened, I think, intently. And I just remember the solo and his version of All Along the Watchtower. And whenever it goes to that slow slide part of the solo, just blew
Oh,
my mind. And from there, I was just obsessed and, wanted to learn guitar and had this like clunky Toys R Us guitar I'd gotten probably when I was 8. And it was
oh,
missing a couple strings. It was out of tune. It had a speaker underneath the strings that you pressed a button and it was quote unquote electric, and I would just jam on like the G string all day, and I'm sure my family got tired of hearing that. And when I was 11, I got like a knockoff Stratocaster and
oh,
started
you
playing.
did. Okay, when you were 11. Yeah. I mean, because look, I'm a connoisseur of the blues guitarists that are out there. I've interviewed Kenny Wayne Shepherd, interviewed Johnny Lang, interviewed Buddy Guy, interviewed some of the great blues guys of all time,
Wow.
and you are fitting into it beautifully with your own sound, and that's what's key, and why guys like Kenny and Johnny, that you guys are melting yourself into the blues world, but also have your own sound. Look, in Texas, did you know growing up, and even as you're in your early double digits, of the Johnny Winters, the Stevie Ray Vaughns, the T-Bone Walkers, the Jimmy
Mhm.
Vaughns, the Freddie Kings, the Billy
Yeah.
Gibbons. Did you have a sense that Texas was just exploding with that kind of music?
Yes. For me, it was Hendrix first, then Stevie Ray Vaughan followed
Oh,
slowly after, which like I say this all the time, you can't grow up in Texas and not hear ZZ Top and Stevie Ray Vaughan, especially if you're playing guitar. But I really got so into those artists, and then I heard them talking about their influences. Like, all right, let's go back. And I'd always been a huge, in general history nerd. My grandmother was a librarian. I got dropped off
oh,
at her library all the time growing up, and so I
wow.
just always loved history. And so I got into music, and music history followed. And so Buddy Guy was the first more traditional blues player that I became excited about, and still is one of my favorites. But then, yeah, I mean, I went all the way back to Robert Johnson and Son House and everything in between. And, with Lightning Hopkins, T-Bone Walker,
Oh,
Freddie King is my favorite king of the kings,
yeah.
But early on, I loved them all. I read, and that was all pretty early. I was not listening to what was popular whenever I was in middle school and high school. I was listening to these older blues players and jazz and stuff, and so all that stuff found me pretty early,
Oh,
and that's also what kind of prompted me to start going out and playing live in Houston
right.
early, and that was the most influential part of growing up is the being welcomed by older players in the Houston music community and given a chance to learn on stage is what made me fall in love with really wanting to be a musician.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I want to have one thing to talk about that for sure, about mentors and people that help young musicians. I've had a number on the show. One recently, she's 16. I guess, she has 100 gigs this year at 16.
Nice.
Wineries, breweries all over. And her mentors, I just actually met up with at the Cancer Can Rock event this weekend. And that is such a big deal. One thing about the blues, Clay, is interviewing Buddy Guy and his story and I'll send you the link of the interview. It's a short one because he was sitting on his porch and it was like 20 years
Yeah.
ago. And
Wow.
he said about, the fact that he knew that when when he would go to London and play or whatever, he would look out there and see the Led Zeppelins, the Beatles, all these youngsters out in the crowd who would envelop like Led Zeppelin did enveloping the blues and all this, and then change it and put it into their rock and roll perspective, and then he'd go back and they would have to deal with it. That is a big deal. That all of those guys that we just mentioned, the Freddie Kings, the Abercrombie, the Buddy Guy, the BB Kings, were really the catalysts behind the blues. And then it's what people like you and other guys in your genre and the growing blues. Robert Cray was one of my favorites back in the day. I mean, big time. He's playing here soon, and I want to interview him again
That's
as well. Basically, it's just these incredible bluesmen that we've talked about, that the endless names and music that they began in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and then it was grabbed by, and most people were very, very appreciative and thankful, and you have to be, because they began the ride for so much blues, right?
Yes. That to me that makes me think of I think the attitude that all these pioneers had, you got to remember they were pioneers. They didn't have anyone showing them this.
No.
before. They had their influences, but some people just made much greater steps in their innovation, right? And that's why I don't like the idea of blues or certain genres supposedly supposed to be one thing or the other. That
Right.
it's supposed to be this arrangement, it's supposed to always be 1-4-5 or a shuffle,
Sure.
whatever. I don't think that rules are not for music or creation, and that's why I think the most impactful artists didn't adhere to those, and they were truly original, unique,
Right.
and taking it places and stuff like that. And that's what I think any artist likes to see is another artist doing something they would have never thought of, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Um, but the thing to me is that I'd say this a lot when people ask, where is music like this going, or where's the guitar going? And to me, I just don't think people will ever get tired of seeing people with instruments in their hands making the music happen in real time.
Right.
That's
Right.
roots music. It's always gonna have an audience.
Right. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And look, your guitar playing is pretty spectacular. When did it begin to take that shape? I know you started performing at 13. When did the guitar start really feeling in such an incredibly powerful spectrum for you? Because now you can see, man, you are really, really excelling in that. It is fabulous.
Thanks.
Sure.
Thanks a lot. I mean, with the guitar was my first instrument. It was definitely, I was not a born singer at all. I really had to work at it. And
Wow. So,
so the guitar was really what I had a vocabulary with first. And that's at all the live instances I was finding myself in at a young age, were to be able to jam on the guitar. I'd sing the verse and I'd sing the song, but really what I was excited about was getting to the guitar solo or playing the riff.
great.
And so that's just always been what feels more like an extension of myself. And nowadays it's fun because I finally kind of made a breakthrough vocally to where it feels more like an instrument as well. You
Sure.
know,
Yeah, absolutely. And you're churning along already at a young teenager age, and then again, you're 21 years old, you release "Burn the Ships." What happened between in those teen years? What were you just playing all the time, starting to feel like you wanted to go full speed with the record and things like that?
yeah. I mean, I was by the time I was in eighth and ninth grade, I was playing at ice houses in Texas on the weekends. You know,
Great.
and so it was an interesting way to grow up, but I loved it. And I had supportive parents and supportive friends in the band that I played with, and we were all happy to be there doing it.
Right.
But so I played in some different groups. I did the trio thing that was kind of Clay Melton at a young age, but then I played in some harder rock bands and things like that. I quickly stopped caring about school. I could not see the point from A to B as far as where a college degree could help me get on a stage.
Right.
I did about a year and a half of community college out after high school, and I took all the jazz courses I could, and
Right.
that was pretty much it. And then I dropped out, and I'm glad I did. I learned a lot.
Yep.
But it was at that point when I dropped out. It's a different conversation with your parents when you're saying, well, I'm just going to try and give this an honest go. And I'm so glad I did, just because it really became kind of the mantra of that album, "Burn the Ships." It's like now or
Right.
never. I got the time, I got the hunger, and I started just teaching guitar lessons on the side and making music, and so that's why I'm happy to be where we are today. Playing everywhere we can.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned a little earlier about Celia Campbell, the local musician here, who had these amazing mentors. In fact, one woman, Juliana McDowell, who's very well known, sings all over here and down in Key West, and I've interviewed her on the show, singer-songwriter. She mentored Celia and then just let her debut one of her original songs this weekend at a festival. I mean, for a 16-year-old. You had to feel like that there was some helpful mentorship for Clay Melton in those early years?
Yes, 100%. Like I said earlier, the music community that I had growing up was very welcoming and supportive. Um, and it wasn't common for younger players really to be in the bars that I was that my dad was taking me there and seeing if the owner would let us in so I could get up, you know.
Right.
So I mean, really, my biggest support has been my father in that way. But once I got out there, it was Carlos Johnson was a percussionist and band leader in Houston, and he taught me some of my biggest lessons early on, just how to share a stage and when to shut up, you know, how to listen, you know, how to, you know, give space and stuff. And from there, Dan Workman, who produced our first album, he ran a studio in Houston, Sugar Hill Studios, where he produced Destiny's Child's first album there, and worked with the Stones when they've come through tour. So he was early mentor before, and that was years before we worked with them to record. We met through mutual artists, and so he taught me a lot of lessons as well, you know. And that's why I think it's important for artists to try and connect to some of the, you know, find a mentor wherever you can, you know. It's invaluable.
It totally is. There were two bands at the Cancer Can Rock event that I emceed and played the opening set at this past weekend. And it was Todd Brooks and Poor Decisions and Delta Spur. They're both local country and also rock bands, and they both helped her. So I love to hear that, because that's something that a lot of musicians really love doing, is helping out those younger that want to ascend. You released Burn the Ships, and I just heard the title reason, and I love that. So now I get it, why it's Burn the Ships, done at Sugar Hill Studios. Here's a little overview of this debut record from Clay Melton right now. Let's all go. Burn the Ships.
Crazy eyed, black snide, cradle slip down, wiping my face off with acid machine. Deciding if I'm going crazy, I might as well stop. If I got something for you, you're going nowhere.
Well, Clay, you know, there you go. That's what kicked off what's going on now. I mean, that was 7 years ago, I guess, right? 6 years ago. You're about almost the exact same age as my son. So I love this. That gives me even more of a heart beating, and I'm going to turn them on to you, because I think I've realized that as I've gone along the last week or two. I'm like, this is fabulous. Again, we were talking a little bit earlier. A few years later, it was Live in Texas. I guess you've been playing live and stuff, and just continuing to churn along with Live in Texas. How did you come to want to record? Obviously, ZZ Top was a huge part of your Texas upbringing, and they were absolutely, as I said, my first show. When I saw them in Waterbury, Connecticut, man, they had cows come out on stage, and they didn't even have the beards yet. They were, you know, young and dusty, and they're, you know, Frank and Billy, and they were just, it was Fandango tour, and it was just phenomenal.
Nice.
Anyway, fast forward to this riveting cover of this that I love so much, and it's such a big part of them from Tres Hombres album. How did you want to do Jesus Just Left Chicago?
Well, Tres Hombres is one of those cassettes that was in my dad's collection that he gave me. So
yes.
I've always loved that album. And that transition from Waiting on the Bus into Jesus Just Left Chicago was always exciting.
Yeah.
And I don't know, we were thinking about including a cover on the EP of Back to Blue, because we originally did a studio version of it first. And I don't know, I just wanted to do something that I thought our Texas audience would resonate with. And I'd always had this vision of kind of a rocked up version of that song in my head. And so we just went for it, and you know, it's become part of our live show now, and you know, we're thankful that their publishing company, you know, was okay with us doing a cut of it, and it's just, you know, it's a fun track.
Yeah, I can only imagine, because I've interviewed Billy Gibbons one time, and it's funny because most interviews I do are like this, or they were on the phone, you know, for articles. with a couple of people, it was emails, but their PR people said they will do the email. They wouldn't have anybody tell them anything. And another one was Greg Allman. The rest of the people I've talked to, but Billy and I talked. He was an amazing, amazing guy, and he would love the fact, I bet, that you did this. You haven't been in touch with those guys about this, although we just lost Dusty, obviously. But
Yes.
yeah, but I think Billy would absolutely love this. Let's go to the Do-Si-Do in Woodlands, Texas. This is about the beginning of 2022, right? Around in January, around then. And I'm telling you, this makes me just smile and boogie a little bit myself. A beautiful version of Jesus Just Left Chicago.
So this is our tribute to ZZ Top. This one's for Dusty. It's called Jesus Just Left Chicago.
Jesus just left Chicago. He's bound for New Orleans. Well, now Jesus just left Chicago. He's bound for New Orleans. Yeah. Working one end to the other, yeah, all points in between. Yeah. Took a jump through Mississippi. Oh, muddy water turned to wine. Jump through Mississippi. Oh, muddy water turned to wine.
Oh man, I'm telling you, when I've heard that all week and I hear it again, it's like I was back seeing those guys. You just did a beautiful job, man. And I think you should be real proud again of the fact that you convey that feeling of blues, and you've got a kind of a blues rock feel, obviously, as well, but you also are able to sound your own sound. Things must be feeling really, really good right now, and you are playing where over the next few months? This show will probably debut in a few weeks. So what's the summer look like for Clay Melton?
Cool. We're Louisiana, Arizona in June, but we're in the Midwest. We're playing in Reggie's in Chicago, Merchant Street Festival in Kankakee, Illinois, and then we're working our way back over to the East Coast, hopefully out towards your area. We got a couple dates, the Wochick Blues Fest in Massachusetts, and some more stuff in between. So we're on the road all summer.
Sounds fantastic. Clay Melton, I know my partner Suzanne and I at least immediately will become wonderful fans. We've been playing the music during making dinner the last week too, and really loving it.
Great, love to hear
and I'm sure we're not alone. It seems like the bass is growing too. Everybody, there's Runner and Alive on a Wire. Best place to find that stuff is at your website, Clay. Is that claymelton.com?
That's right. Yeah, all our music, and tour dates, and tickets, and all that.
Yep, and all the videos of his career and live stuff, and then you'll run out to see this guy. Clay Melton, thanks again for being on Living on Music with me, man.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, and hopefully we'll meet up and be able to high five at some gig in the DC area. We'll talk soon.
Rock and roll.
Thank you, brother. Wow. Yep, I meant what I said during the show. We've become fans of Clay's already. Just love the sound of the blues rock. Hopefully we'll be seeing him in this region. Clay Melton, thanks so much for being part of Living on Music. Please, let's keep in close touch. Everybody, if you'd like to become a part of Living on Music, there are a couple of ways to do it. Go to Facebook, Living on Music on Facebook. If you're already a member, thank you. If you're not, just become one, and you don't get overly pinged, but it's a fun way to kind of always find out what Living on Music episodes are coming up, and also a lot of other wonderful music moments across the board. Then you can go to YouTube and subscribe, trying to grow the subscriptions, because things really can blossom if you're raising your subscription. So subscribe to Living on Music with Steve Houck on YouTube. And also, if you like a podcast, you can go to any major podcast and search Living on Music with Steve Houck, Houk, and you'll find it, the last probably 40 episodes of all different kinds there, and you can that's where you'll be able to find all the episodes, and they're on largely all the major podcasts that are out there. And if you want to become a part of the legacy of Living on Music, been doing the show for pro bono for 3 years, plus 3 years, and again, there's no company involved. It's me and some of the Zebra Press and things like that, but we're trying to kind of turn the corner and raise some funds to get the expenses going. So if you'd like to become part of the legacy, go to Venmo and go to Living on Music LLC, at Living on Music LLC, and donate whatever you can, and it will help us just get through expenses, and that is wonderful. Looking for sponsors and sponsorships and things like that, but during a pandemic, it was very, very difficult to do, and that's when the show started. So we're trying to come out and just cover basic expenses, and you can become a part of the legacy. You'll be listed on the website forever as part of the contributors, but give it a shot, and we'd love to have you as part of our Living on Music Nation in the core. Thanks again, Clay Melton. We hope to see you soon playing your amazing music up here. Stay tuned to Living on Music for an amazing slew of people coming up. Until then, keep living on music.